Hey everybody, it's Gabe and Keenan from the Plan Stage Product Managers. We are going to do a demo according to the definition in our handbook, which is a scripted recording in the attempt to influence buyers. Given that this is for the OKR for Q4 in the product organization at GitLab, we're going to do this, but also with some slight commentary added as we go through things. We're going to try to cover the full plan stage, see all the benefits, awesomeness, and from start to finish of all the features. So first thing you'll notice, as we are in here, this is a demo group. And so we're going to start from the assumption creating a top level group, but it's actually going to be a subgroup just for licensing purposes. And the first thing we're going to do here is create a new subgroup as if we were setting up GitLab for the very first time. So we're going to go ahead and create a new subgroup, product demo. Call it that. We'll go ahead and make it public because we want to make it public. This is a demo group or GitLab product demos. I don't know if we need an avatar right now, but you can add one. Pretty great. So we'll go ahead and create a group. Product GitLab itself is organized into the group, subgroup, project structure, where you can have a project that lives within a group or subgroup, and I think up to 20 subgroups within a parent top level group. So now that we are here, we have the ability to look at epics, which we don't have any. And
before you go to that,
yeah,
what would be your clear delineator between when I should create a group versus when I should create a project?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think kind of goes back and forth. Typically people organize, I've noticed people and customers have organized groups and subgroups based on how they want to organize their project repositories mostly. There are various ways you can do it. We could do it from a portfolio standpoint, which I suppose, would you like to go ahead and demo that? Would it be like to set up a portfolio from scratch within an organization?
I think that makes sense, yes.
Cool. Okay, so now we have our top level group. I think the next thing that I would do is understanding, let's say I have 3 different kind of portfolios of products, 3 different kind of value streams within my organization. The first thing I'd probably do is go ahead and create dedicated subgroups for each of those. Maybe we'll call this portfolio 1 and go ahead and make that public as well. We'll go ahead and create, hop back up to the main demo. One thing I didn't notice, we have a ton of space right here for our breadcrumbs, but we're like limiting the amount we're showing because there's not enough space, but there is enough space. That's bothered me a little bit always. I don't know why. I'm going to create a new subgroup for my portfolio 2, second value stream. Sorry for the bland names, but you know, it is what it is. Going up to our top level group again, we're going to create another subgroup for a third one. We'll call that portfolio 3. Now within GitLab is the way our labeling system works. Labels created at the top group level will inherit down to their children. So a lot of what we recommend doing is going ahead and creating standardized group labels at the top. So we're going to do that in a second. And then we also, as you can see, everything from your subgroups will roll up into your top level groups. I think maybe before we go ahead and create stuff within the top level group, we can just create a couple placeholder projects here. Let's call this a mobile app and make this public. Go ahead and initialize this with a README. One thing that I thought would be great, I've always thought this, is that when you're creating a new project, we should have a little bit more of a wizardy type walkthrough. A lot of people don't realize that you could turn the project repository off and just have issues management if you want to do that from the settings. So maybe for this one, we'll turn off our repository and just have our issue view. The kind of cool thing that I noticed when I was demoing this before is that if you turn off your repository and you go back to your project overview, it'll actually show your wiki as the default, but there's no way to specify if you want your wiki to be the default landing page or if you want your repo to be the first if both are enabled. So that's one thing that I thought was a little interesting. Wikis are outside the purview of the plan stage, so we won't kind of get into that. But hopping back up now, we have a project within portfolio 3. Let's look back at the demo here. We'll create projects at portfolio 2. And maybe we'll call this the API. Go ahead and make that public as well. And then we'll create one more project inside the top level portfolio 1 subgroup. I don't know about you, Keenan, but I've always kind of wished that there were, we'll call this the web client. How's that? Since we have an API, a mobile app, we'll have a web client. Navigating between groups and subgroups via web, like this structure is kind of annoying sometimes. Suppose you can do things like, well, can't really get back up to your parent any other way other than this. So that's that. So we have portfolio. Each of these can contain multiple projects, different varieties. You can add members directly to this top level group, which will then cascade the permissions downstream. So I'm going to go ahead and add you, Keenan. We'll add Keenan O'Keefe, Nerd Herder. There you go. And we'll make you a maintainer. How's that? So now that you have access to that, you should get a notification email letting you know that, and you should be able to now jump in and see and have access to, at a maintainer level, everything within the product demo group and subgroups. So that's great. We'll jump in next to go maybe top level. We want to create a objective as kind of a epic, and we'll call this improve. I don't know. What do we want to improve? Well, let's see. Increase adoption rates of customers in our target markets. Epics are pretty flexible. You can use them to track work, and each epic can have a series of sub-epics, I think up to 5 nested deep within the ultimate tier. And then you can also have issues that are attached to an epic at any level. So typically we encourage folks to use a maximum of 3 tiers of epics, just because it gets a little confusing if you get further in that. But let's go ahead and say we want to increase the adoption rates of customers from the target market. Goals, increase and drive revenue growth through improving our ability to capture our SAM, which is our serviceable addressable market. And just to keep with it, we could call this like an objective. And then for the key results, increase conversion rates from, let's just say it's 2% now to 5%. Increase ARR from, let's say we have 10 million right now to 15 million. So we want to increase it by 50%. Typically, when you're doing things at the top level portfolio, you don't want to dictate how, you want to dictate what the outcome should be. So this is a pretty good example of that. Notice at this point, we haven't set up any labels. We can go ahead and create a new group label here, or we can manage group labels for the sake of it. I'm going to go ahead and set up some basic workflow labels and some basic hierarchy structures. So we'll call this one, if you think about P, we'll do scope labels, and we'll call this an objective, or maybe from portfolio planning standpoint, theme, and top level epics, top level themes for our organization. Keep it that color. And maybe the next tier down, we'll create one called P epic. How's that? Epic level initiatives for a portfolio. So each portfolio then will define their own epics that map up to the objective. And then we'll create another one for our features. And the cool thing about scope labels, they're mutually exclusive. You'll see how that works later on, but more or less you can never have anything that is prefixed with a P : : You can only have one of those labels on an issue at any given time. If you add a new one, it will automatically replace the old one. Level work items for a project. I'll say for portfolio group. And I think we'll go ahead and create few labels for issue types, and we'll call this a feature, and we'll call this a user story, maybe just a story for short. Make all these orange. And then we can create a new label for T bug. Maybe one for T backend, or we'll call it type data. How's that? These are really flexible. You can mix and match, but typically, if you want to have standardized processes, scope labels are a great way to do it because you can map them to your issue boards and make for a good workflow. So now that we have our epic levels defined as labels, we have our basic issue types, maybe bug, story, tech debt, and then we're going to go through and add a couple workflow labels. Maybe we'll do backlog, make all these green. Ready. Well, we'll keep it simple. And progress. And we'll create one for workflow review. We'll just call it review. And we have another step. Maybe we're going to do a release step, where it moves through the different environments and whatnot. Okay, so now that's there. We have the one epic we created. I'm going to go back through. I'm going to pick up our theme label, which is great. You can either from here create a new epic and keep all of your epics in this top level group, or if you want to have more controls and not allow anyone in your organization, let's say you wanted the executive level to operate here and you want your director level to operate at the portfolio, like individual subgroup portfolio level, you can do that and it will roll up. So what we'll do here, we'll go ahead and hop over to our first portfolio that has the web client in it. And maybe what we'll go ahead and do here is create a new epic that will let us optimize the conversion funnel. And we know that this goal here, we'll go ahead and make this an objective, is to optimize the conversion funnel.
So we could show that as, increasing the sign-up rate as well as increasing net conversions.
Yeah. So key results, increase net conversions. And then what would you say the other one was, the sign-up rate?
So if we're optimizing the funnel, at the top of it is going to be net new signups. So if you increase the number of signups, and then you can work on increasing your conversion rate. So
yeah, and net new signups, increase conversion into paid customer.
And then if we wanted, we could add a third, which would be, increase the individual value for each signup, but that could be a different epic in and of itself.
Yeah, we'll just stick with this for now. We're going to go ahead and save these changes that are there. And maybe this top level, we think, hey, let's go ahead and add an issue for one of our projects, or should we go ahead and create a feature epic, I guess. We'll do that first. I'm going to create a new epic here, and it's going to say, let's see, identify. Maybe we'll do for new signups. Net new signups there at the top level, and then create another one for increase to paid customer. So we have a pretty clear separation of concerns here, which is great. So if I hop into this one now, wait, I guess I forgot to add our label here. We can make this a epic level because it's on the subgroup, and then we can hop into our paid conversion epic and make this maybe a feature. Sure. I guess it also would be an epic. This is where it kind of breaks down a little bit, but for the sake of it, and we're in here and we're going to go, you can either add an issue here, or if we want to go back up to the top level, actually, I don't think can you add an issue now and put it into one of these children epics?
Yes, you can.
Oh yeah, let's see how that works.
Be able to create it and then drag it under.
Oh, this is where I always get tripped up. So I'm gonna cancel that. That would be if I wanted to add an existing link, but I want to create a new issue. So we're going to do that. And the first thing I think we want to do is run A/B. We'll say first thing, identify where things are breaking down and sign up flow. I'm going to go ahead and select a project here, put that in the web client. So that's created. And then how do I get it inside of this one?
I think maybe that might still be behind a feature flag. You might have to add that manually.
No.
Apologies.
Okay, so you can do is if you, I just copied the link address for this. I'm gonna hop into this first one, or actually the second one, and I'm gonna add an issue here. So that will reassociate it from the parent epic down to this one. So if we go back to the parent epic of this, you can kind of see how now we have that issue. Sorry, there's a bug with magic mouses. We can see that there. And so the other thing that we're going to do here is add this this epic we created within the portfolio up into the, connect it up into the top level objective. So if we go here to the list, we can see the increased adoption rates of the theme. And we're going to go ahead and add this epic here. And so as we can see now, we have all of our epics have rolled up that we created from our subgroups. And I didn't add one here to the net new signs, but we should go ahead and add this as a feature. Call it a feature level thing. Close that out and refresh this. We can see we have some epics. We have a theme, a feature, an epic, and then a feature tied to it, which is great, bubbling all down. It'd be nice if this kind of was in a hierarchy view, but we are working on that for the roadmap. One of the things to note is right now there's not showing up in the roadmap because we haven't set any due dates. So why don't we go back and manually set something right now? And starting at the theme level, let's say that this is going to be a start date of, why not, this past Monday. And we need to get it done, I don't know, say
Yeah,
by
take it to the end of the quarter.
March, so January, February, March. There you go. You can start this at the beginning of the quarter just for consistency's sake. So we've manually set these due dates here. So if we hop back over the roadmap now, we can see that shows up in our quarterly view. We can drill down in the roadmap to months, into weeks if we even want to do that, which is great. We'll keep it at the quarter view. And there's also filtering here. As we get more complex, we can kind of show how that works. So now that we have kind of our top level date set for our theme, we're going to hop back down and let's look at our next epic and let's put some due dates on those. As you can kind of see here, which is nice, you can view the hierarchy of your epic tree in the sidebar. So it's easy to hop back up to your parent, no matter how deep you are, which is great. And we'll set a due date of this. Let's have this one start this week. And let's say we want to get it done by the end of February. So great, we have that. And then we'll look at our children. And I guess they'll probably follow a similar type date where maybe we'll start this one on Monday, February 3rd, and we'll have it due on the 14th, 21st, why not? Hopping back over into our signups. This one's probably gonna run a little bit longer. Let's just go ahead and plan for that out. And we'll start at February 3rd, and we'll have it go until March 6th, why not? Great. So now we have some due dates. If we hop back over to our roadmap, you'll notice here we can look at the roadmap for this, and we have the conversion funnel, which is the parent, and then we have the two below it, which are the conversions into paid customer. Let's say if we just want to show the epics on this view, you could say label is epic there, and then run that, and it will filter things down to just show us those epics, so we can kind of view it that way. It'll be really nice when we get the nested kind of being able to drop down and view the hierarchy within the roadmap. I think that's going to be a huge win. I'm excited about it. You can also do filtering by start date, by due date, and you can also view things by open and closed. And coming shortly, I believe in 12.8, you'll be able to see the progress of an epic as it's linked to issues. Now, let's hop back over to a list within this project. And let's say we know we want to increase net new signups. We have an issue here for identifying things that are breaking in the signup flow. And just similar to epics, you have your Markdown Editor. Here's description. Great. We can even add tasks if you want. Pull data, analyze data, and then determine gaps. Create, follow on experiment issue. And we can save that. What's nice is our description should be version controlled. So if we were to edit this again and say, here is another edit, and say the changes, theoretically we'll show you the diff, or maybe that's not enabled for this demo group. It's not, it's behind a feature flag, but it's coming soon. So you can look at the diffs of things, which is great. And within an issue, you can do all the great things. There's these things called to-dos. So if, let's say you're mentioned in a comment and I say, hey, G Weaver, what's up? And save that, it will automatically create a to-do for me. So I can go over my to-dos and I should be able to see that I address myself on issue 1. And this is a good call to action. I exclusively use to-dos, so I don't use email notifications. We need to do a lot of work here, and I'm not gonna spend a ton of time demoing it. But you more or less have different types of to-dos on your objects. If you want, you can look at who the author was. You can scope it down to a project or a group, and then you can also see what the action was. If something was assigned to me, I automatically get a to-do. If something I was mentioned, or if I was directly addressed. And directly addressed is when the GWeaver comes first, or if I wanted to say, hey, this is a cool thing, and then I say at GWeaver, that is a mention. So there's the difference between the two. So if I go back over my to-dos now, I can see I was mentioned and I wasn't directly addressed. So this creates a lot of confusion, and we're gonna work on fixing this up in the near future. So people aren't really sure what the difference is between being mentioned and directly addressed. It's not intuitive unless you just know it and use it regularly, but it is what it is. Cool, so we have our epics, we have an issue. I think the next thing we'll do is look at our project itself and set up an issue board. Actually, we're gonna set up issue boards at the group level, because that way all of your issues from your projects within a group or subgroup roll up into your an issue board that you can create and manage there. So you can look at cross-functional projects, manage work across lots of different spaces, more or less. And we're gonna go ahead and do that. And there's some defaults here, and I'm gonna click on this just for Sid because he's been wanting me to change it. Right now, this works. You can automatically, it will create to-do and to-do, and I think this should have created some labels for me automatically, which is great. So in the base case, this works great. I think it might break down a little bit if we, I don't know how it'll work if we maybe leave one and go back to our boards and see how this works. See how I delete the label, it automatically deleted the list. So I think we should probably work on adding some more validation and kind of safety checks to label management. There's been some people who have said things like, hey, I deleted a label, or somebody deleted the label I created and it like messed up my whole workflow and I can't undo it, which is bad, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and create a new board. And let's call this Gabe's board. And within, when you're creating a board, you can scope it to a milestone, which we haven't shown yet. We'll get to it, which is a time boxed kind of construct within GitLab. It will track you, all the issues and merge requests that are associated with that given time box, and then also show you Burndown Chart, soon to be Burndown Chart. And you can also scope this to labels if you wanted to. So if I only want to see things show up here that are a feature or a bug or a story or a tech debt or in a certain workflow process, you can do that as well. Or you can filter by assignee or weight. I'm not sure why somebody would filter a board by weight, because it would only match anything with one single weight, but it's there. Note to self, investigate that.
I've seen a user use that to identify a board, or to build a board that would identify issues that needed to be broken down further, and then they set up workflows to say, like, here's a large issue, let's break it into, front end, back end versus just multiple issues.
Oh, fascinating. That's interesting. One of the things that I thought was interesting about this is because we just created a new board, and I don't know if it was because we deleted the label, but that like little helper thing to get started quickly disappeared in the middle now, and now it's just some lists. But that being said, we'll go ahead and add some labeled issue lists based on our workflow, and we can kind of click these to quickly add them all, and then we can drag and drop. We have our backlog in progress. We'll review first before we release, and then it will go to closed, which is great. From the issue board, you can see a couple things that are in flight. We have the ability to filter again. That's pretty standard across the application. We can show and hide labels, which is nice if you have issues that have a ton of labels. You can always edit it, and you can add lists on the fly, mixing and matching these 3 different issue list types, whether label, assignee, or milestone. And then from here, you can also do things like adding work in progress limits, which we just launched in, I think, 12. It's not fully launched yet. It's behind a feature flag still, but it's enabled here. So let's say we want to limit the work in progress for our backlog to 10 because we don't want too much. And then you can use the escape key, by the way, to close that window, which I recently learned. It's been a pretty big time saver. And in progress, we're going to limit that to 3. Just press enter to save. And then our review, let's go ahead and do the same thing, limit that to 3, and then save that. And then our release, we'll just leave because it is what it is. From this view, you can directly add issues if you want. So you can, given this is a group issue board, you have to specify what project you want to map things into. One thing that I would love to see is like here, your project search looks kind of like this, but if you look back at your epics, for example, when you go into add an issue or create an issue, this dropdown is a lot nicer and prettier. It's easier to read than like a long mangled path. So I'd like to see that nice UX treatment come into our issue boards in the near future. But that being said, we're reloading. And I wonder if it's stopped. One of the big things we're working on this year, and it's going to be a year-long effort, is making everything in GitLab more real-time, including issue boards, so you don't get stuck with loading spinners like that. You don't really need to, you shouldn't. And also, if I were to move this, if Keenan's looking at this board and I were to move this issue over, he would not see that change unless he manually refreshed the view, which is kind of like, not great. Another thing too, just to highlight real quick, you can minimize your issue list if you don't want to see the noise and you just want to look at a subset. But back to the demo, go ahead and create a follow-up issue to run an A/B experiment. And we're going to create that in the web client project, submit that. So this is not ready yet, and that's a follow-on. We'll put it here, put it below. Whoa, what just happened there? Yeah, that was interesting. I wonder if we can recreate that. Put it here, backlog. Nope. Copy link address. We'll go ahead and open this one. So what you have to do right now to work with issues and issue boards, you have to open them in new tabs, or you have to click through and click back and wait for everything to reload. You can kind of pick your poison. Either is a really good experience. But here's a follow-on issue that we created. Save that change. And as you can see, it's got annotated down to the issue number, which is kind of nice. You can see the title, and then you can see that here we can also add this as a linked issue, which relates to, and you could say this blocks this other issue. So we can't run this until run the A/B experiment until we identify where things are breaking and we have some data on it. So that makes sense. It's blocking this. So if we hop over to this A/B experiment issue we created, you can say it's blocked by, which nice, way to go. We just released blocking and blocked by features in 12.7, so this is great. Actually, I think it's still behind a feature flag too. So, and is generally available now at all of GitLab.org and should be generally public to everyone in the wider community by 12.8, which is cool. Lots of things also on issue to note. You can give them a thumbs up, thumbs down, add a custom reaction. And where this comes into play is if you go to your issue list, you can sort by popularity, which is your thumbs up or thumbs down label. It's great. You can also sort by last updated, created, milestone due date, label priority, which I haven't gotten to that yet, manual and weight. This is another view into your issues. If you don't want to use boards, you can also use this kind of issue view. And it also supports a cool thing called manual sorting, which right now, AB experiment is a lower like relative order and priority than the first one. But if I were to go over here and move it in above in terms of priority order and go back to my issue board, you can kind of see it was automatically updated. Vice versa, I think if I drag that down here and I go back to my list, see how it reordered the priority and then carried across both places. This is a good thing and a bad thing. I think a lot of people get confused by this, especially when you have teams that maybe share labels and have overlapping priority orders. Things can get out of whack kind of quickly. One of the things that we're looking at doing is making it so that on an issue board, you can manually set the priority order and ignore the global priority. So that way, like whoever is on this issue board managing it can set what the order is and it will maintain that. That's interesting. I added my default list, but this just showed up again. Is that because the label was gone?
I think so, yeah.
What happens if I click add default list? So I guess it adds it back. Interesting. Why didn't that option show up though when I was on my other board? Create my other board. Wait, where'd my other board go? Oh, here's a problem. I was in the web client when I was creating that one, and I think this is the yeah, so here's the board I created for that development. This is one of those wonky things where it worked on the project. I guess I hopped into the project here and I didn't realize it, and then I went over to the boards and
so for clarification, you can have separate workflow boards at the group and project level?
Yes, and you can also duplicate the labels right now, I believe. So we have to do here, which this is a project level label. And then if I go into now this issue that's inside of this project, I think, if I look here in my labels, we have to do, doing, but I guess to do is not flowing down. Not sure. It's worth investigating. As you can see, yeah, it's a little interesting. I get lost sometimes. I've trained myself to go and look over at the boards at the group level only. So usually I will go up here and I will click gitlab.org and I'll go over to the side and click boards because that's where the issue boards are that I track. But yes, you can have project level issue boards, group level issue boards, and labels that flow downstream. And you can also promote a project label upstream. So we're on web client, the project. If I go to labels, I believe this is, you can kind of see this is a group label, this is a project label. And let's say I wonder what happens. This is an interesting experiment. If I go to portfolio one, I create a doing label. And let's make it green, the same color. So I have doing here, and then I hop back into my project. I go to labels. This is kind of one of the things that's interesting is you have a doing group label and a doing project label. It's the same name. So if I go to my issue, for example, and I want to, this is a, yeah. I see I have two doing labels now, which I don't know which one is which. We need to probably address that rather quickly because that's not great experience. But I wonder if I can, what happens when I promote a label up, my project label, I want to promote to group label. It'll make it available for all projects inside GitLab Portfolio 1. Existing project labels with the same title will be merged. Promote. So now I have just a single group label. So that's one way to clean it up. it looks like, which is nice. And I think if we go back to our portfolio one and look at our labels, yeah, we're great. You can also filter by your issues, merge requests, epics directly if you want to look at that here, which is kind of nice. All right, we're on portfolio one. We have a couple issues that are living technically within a project. We have an issue board that we set up for basic workflow. And I think the other thing we might want to set up is a milestone, which is kind of a time box. We're going to create a new one. We'll call this sprint one. And we're going to say this started technically on Monday, and it's going to end here. And we're going to create that milestone. And we'll go ahead and create another one for sprint 2, just because we know that's going to come up next. It's going to start next week on Monday, and it's going to be over on Friday. And we're going to create that milestone. So now we have 2 milestones here, and you can create milestones at the project level or at the group level. Same idea as if you created at the group level, it will be available to associate issues across all projects within that group or subgroup, which is a nice way to kind of align everybody behind a common time box or time frame for your delivery cycles. So hopping back over to our issues, and maybe this one we're going to get done in sprint 1. So we can identify this to, yeah, interesting. I guess this is getting inherited from upstream somewhere, but I have no idea which is which. What is the real sprint 1?
Yeah, I was setting up milestones for you so you could speed through that, but we moved to the wrong portfolio.
It's okay. But yeah, this it's a good it's a good use case though of how it's easy to get overlapped with things.
I think I would like to the story I'd like to tell is that while setting these up both at the group and the project level, you should work with your peers inside of your account to set up a a basic plan of how you want to structure things, because you can easily step on each other's toes.
Yep, you can. So yes, here what Kia said, he created these at the top level group, which is great. So I guess given that, we're going to go back in and how about I delete the ones I created since those are kind of already there. We'll align with the ones at the top level. So if I go to my milestones now, I can I don't know if I can delete a milestone. Yeah, I can delete it. And then we'll go ahead and delete this one as well. So now in our issues here, we will associate this one as sprint 1, which is great. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. And then this one will associate to sprint 2. We'll tackle that next week. Milestone sprint 2. You can also assign things if you were to create a, let's say you want to have a portfolio level, let's say board for grooming. We can go ahead and create one for, create a new board for sprint planning. Call that. And within this board, we're going to add some different lists. We'll add milestone-based lists. And we'll do, I think we're in what, sprint 2 now? Is that right?
I believe so.
We can just add them all. We'll call it that. And I think since sprint 2 is active, this is actually wrong. So if you go ahead and drag these over, it will update the metadata on the issue and assign it to this very sprint. So if you have an open issue of backlogs, this is a put it in the project. You can also, from the issue board, quickly associate epics. And we're going to call this one for the net new signup, since we're kind of working on that, I guess. Epic, and we don't really know when we're going to work on it, but we'll just leave it like that. And you can say this is a feature because it's going to implement something, or T is what it's called for feature. Or story, I guess. And if you want to go ahead and add weight, you can add weight here, and we'll call this a 5 for now. You can edit that out, which is great. And as you can kind of see here, the total weight for all the issues in a given list rolls up into the top, so you can see the total issues, the total weight, which is great. So yeah, there's different use cases for boards. It's pretty flexible. I know some folks at GitLab use assigning boards so that they can see who's working on what within their teams, which is another helpful use case. Anything else you want to add about boards at this point, Keenan?
Did we want to talk about work in progress limits?
Oh, yeah. So I think going back to our sprint board, sorry, sprint planning, here, the other thing you can do if we just want to, like, let's say we're on sprint 2 right now, we can go ahead and scope this to sprint 2 and say that. So I'm not going to see any issues that aren't in sprint 2 or assigned to the sprint already. Let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and start this, move over to workflow in progress. And if we look at this, the click area is kind of wonky. I don't know why it won't open. Anyway, create some more issues. Issue and create another one. 3, we'll call it just issue 3. Maybe if we add a 4th one, issue 4. You can kind of see right now how the background turned red and we are technically over our work in progress limit. We only should have 3, we have 4. If we want to maybe move the 4th back, things are happy again. We're within our work in progress limits, and again, move it over, changes, which is great. And the tricky thing about this, I guess, just from how we need to figure this out is it is on the board level, but you can't enforce anything at the issue level because this is a group level board and this is a project level issue. And so other things can influence this issue outside of it being updated via this board. Like you could update it via a commit or a comment on a merge request or via the API. There's lots of different ways, or from the project itself. And the only thing that knows about work in progress limits is this board. And so it would be nice if we get to the point where literally we could enforce the fact that nothing else can have the work in progress label applied to it. Like case in point, if I open this up and I go to manually add, it's in the workflow backlog. I want to say workflow in progress. I can go ahead and do that here. And there's no indication on this issue that it's over limit.
Interesting. Also, no, there is. So it does show all of every time you move that issue between lanes on the board, it added a updated item in the activity feed on the issue itself.
It did, but like if I go back here, it
doesn't mention work in progress.
Yeah. So the activity feed's really nice. Everything is kind of tracked here and traceable. And whenever an issue is updated, you can see, like, let's say I had a wait of 5 here. It's all captured in the system notes, which is great. But I guess the end goal is if you want to enforce a workflow, you have to prevent this issue from having this label applied to it because it would violate the work in progress limits theoretically, right? Mm-hmm. Unless everybody, like, and I guess that's one of the tricky things to solve and conundrums that we need to figure out. Just because of the flexibility we've built into things, it's also made the idea of enforcing things difficult. Other things to note within issue, you can toggle on and off notifications if you don't want to receive those. You can lock the issue, which will prevent people from commenting on it. So, except for project members. And you can also make in, interesting. You can also make it confidential, which will turn it off and not be discoverable to anybody who is not a member of the project. So this is really handy, especially in GitLab, where we have security issues and other things that we don't want to make public until they've been patched. So it's a great way to track that. Other cool things.
Tracking.
Yeah, time tracking. So the way you set time is via quick actions, which there are a ton of quick actions. Let me just pop open this window to show you all of them. But from the comment or the description, anywhere there's basically a Markdown editor, you can use these quick actions. I can shrug, I can add a to-do, I can mark something as done, a to-do is done. I can subscribe to the issue, unsubscribe, close, reopen. So think of the way you set the time tracking is with the estimate, I believe. Estimate. So I want to estimate, let's say 4 days for this one. can't spell, 4 days. And if I go ahead and comment that, it's going to set the time estimate to 4 days. You can see over here, it's estimated at 4 days. And then if I want to record it, I think it is, what is it, spend? Yeah. So I can go ahead and spend, let's say I spent 12 hours on this and 23 minutes. I can update the time spent as well, and it will show you your time tracking here. We have a lot on our roadmap to surface time reports and time tracking both upstream to parent epics, as well as in group level reporting and project level reporting. Also from within the issue, I can go ahead and I can add this to the epic if I want, which would be increasing that new signups, and let's say it's part of that feature. And I can tie it to the epic just from the issue itself, which is great. So you can kind of go up, bottom up from issues to epics, or from epics and create your issues and find your issues that way. Cool. So another thing to highlight here is a way that you can create issues within GitLab. It's called Service Desk. Service Desk is a way to have a unique email address for each project. And if you were to email that email address, it will automatically create issues. And if you respond to those issues in GitLab, it will email the original submitter. So it's a way to interact with either internal, it's like an IT help desk to people who don't have GitLab accounts but need support and you want to do issue management for that. It's also great for attaching this email to forms and form submissions for collecting customer feedback. So since this is already enabled by default, you can actually set up and customize some of the things here within your project settings. Let's see, in customize display name, those sorts of things. I know it's coming also where we can customize the URL or the mail to address to be something a little bit more palatable and short and memorable, maybe brand based. That should be coming in 12.8 or 12.9, I believe. But what this will let you do is hop over, I'm gonna open up an email client right quick. And that's not it. And compose a new email. And we'll put it in Service Desk. Can you please help? You can also do standard Markdown syntax in here, and that will work. So if you want to like use a form and then take the form contents and apply it to a Markdown template before you send the email out, that's another thing to do too. There's a way to kind of work around the lack of custom fields and form collection within GitLab. And we'll see how this works. I think if I add some quick actions at the bottom of here, and we can call this a T bug because we have our labels that are set up. Now the end user is probably not going to know how to do this, but again, this is a nice little tip that you can use for using your mail to address, embedding it into a form, and then wrapping that inside of the message inside of a custom template that you inject the message from the form into before you actually send it off to the mail to address. So if we go ahead and send this now, it will be sent. In a moment, I will get an email back, but while we wait for that, I'm going to hop back over to the service desk. And it takes just a couple seconds for it to show up usually. Oh, there it is. So we have, it automatically defaults to a confidential issue, which is kind of nice, especially you don't want things out of there. For some odd reason, it did not add my bug label. Not sure why there. Seems like it should have. But you can see it did pick up this markdown formatting here. And if I say, you got it, will resolve. And if I go ahead and comment on that, this will send the email notification back to the original submitter with this message in the thread of it. So I don't know if it is here yet, but we can kind of should be able to go down and see. Here's the original service desk. Did I just archive that?
I think you clicked archive.
Sorry. All mail. Here we go. And here's the response that I put inside of GitLab itself. And this is what was sent to the end user who emailed in. So it's a great way to do back and forth with people who are not GitLab users and still support them with formal issue management and tracking.
So Gabe, if I was to reply to that email as the submitter, would it automatically add my response as a comment?
Yes, it will. And if we go back now, should take just a second. There we go. So there's a response back. It's posted as GitLab support bot. I think we're also looking at how we can improve this so that it comes from the actual person or a more like identifiable sendee. That way we can have a better user experience within Service Desk itself for managing issues and tracking them back to the original submitter. Cool, so that's the basic gist of it. The other thing I guess worth highlighting is now that we have some milestones set up, we can go back to our, not milestones, we have milestones and we have some epics set up. We can go back to our portfolio one. We can look at the epics, and what is a good idea to do once you have some stuff created is toggle on and go back to setting your inherited dates. And this will automatically set the start and end date based on the children issues that are associated and when they will be done based on the milestones that are there. So now that this is set, if we go into our roadmap and we look at, sorry, what was that? It was the optimize the conversion funnel epic. And optimize the conversion funnel epic is now mapped to the same time boxes that the increased net new signups is mapped to. What's kind of nice about this is as you build out more complex dependencies, this will automatically change based on all of the children and when things are scheduled based on how they've been assigned to which milestone. And that will all bubble up through your whole epic tree up to the very top level. So you can easily drill down and see like the time ranges when things are going to be done based on what's actually been scheduled. So you have the flexibility of doing both top-down planning where you automatically set the dates, which is great if you want to like track against project progress, or you can do the kind of more like we have to get the scope done. It's going to take a certain amount of period of time. I don't know when it'll be done, but based on all the things that have been assigned below it that are associated to it, you will be able to dynamically see that, which is pretty nifty.
So Gabe,
Anything
if
else?
I am updating my issues and milestones in my epic associations, my roadmap will be pretty close to a real-time estimation of where things are?
Yes, it will.
Pretty cool.
It is. Very cool. Anything else do you think we should cover, Keenan?
What about the analytics tab?
Oh, that's technically not within the purview of the plan stage, but we can kind of show it. There's lots of different analytics right now. This one is basically issues created per month, and it is interesting, but not super interesting. The cooler thing that I think is this insights, and I can hop over to another demo. This is the default dashboard, and it kind of shows you issues created per month, issues closed per month, bugs created per month. And another project that, or I guess demo that I had set up, actually wrote a custom insights.yaml file, and that would kind of simulate showing things in a portfolio standpoint and rolling up. So this is like the basic roll-up dash page where I have issues by type, and then I can see issues closed by type theoretically, and then bugs created by week. And this is all set by a YAML file that's in a project that you can specify. You can also create as many custom pages as you want, which is cool. There's some customers who are really digging this. They're just not digging some of the bugginess with it. One of the downsides is that, like right now, as you can see, type undefined. I guess like if I don't specify the correct labels at the time I click create on an issue, then it just shows up as undefined. So like a lot of think about use cases of service desk. Somebody emails in, we don't know right away if it's a bug or not. We're going to look at it. We're going to triage it maybe a day later. it will always show up as undefined here because it didn't have labels at the time that it was set up. And even though this is filtered by only certain issue types within a specific label, which represents kind of like a group, it still shows up as undefined. So it's kind of buggy. And there's some customers who really want us to like bring life into this. So I think it'd be cool to get some product management support for this, because I know the quality team hand rolled this themselves and did a great job with it. It just needs a little bit of love to kind of go to the next level. So
where as a user of this, where would I see my Burndown charts?
Oh yeah, your Burndown charts. That's interesting. Let's go back up here, and we can go to the Agile demo. We can go back to the product demo we created. And then if we look at where we created our milestones in our top level, we can go into our current sprint, and we can see a Burndown chart. So right now we just opened a bunch of issues halfway through the sprint, or most of the way through the sprint. So you can kind of see like definite scope creep. You also can see nice things here, and this is great. I actually like it on the group level milestones, the project that the issue belongs to, and as well as like issues that have been assigned. You can also see things like merge requests when they exist, participants, and then a breakdown of labels. And you can specify the Burndown chart by issue weight or by issues. And we're working on improving this to also include a Burndown chart, so that will take up the other half of this. So that way you can see a better reflection of like scope added throughout the course of a sprint instead of just scope removed or completed. So that'll be a good next improvement there, but that's where you look at your Burndown charts. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything, I think, for the most part. The other things within the plan stage that are of less note is the notification settings, which we would also love to work on too. So a big thing that I think, if we can find the resources and time, would be overhauling the to-dos for personal management, but then also the notifications. And so if you go into your profile, you go into settings, and then you go down to notifications. I believe this technically falls within the plan stage as well, and it's like how people are notified. And you can control global settings. As you can see, I have mine disabled, but you can also specify different settings for each group if you want, and specify custom ones if you want to do custom ones. I think for the most part, this is not bad. It would be good if we worked on improving delivery. So if, you get a transactional email for every single notification, and I think some folks would like to have like daily roll-ups and things, so they're not like bombarded all the time. But yeah, this is a pretty big undertaking to fix all these things. It would be like a good 3 or 4 releases in and of itself to properly handle notifications, I think, the way everybody wishes they would. So I would love to get to that. I think we will at some point. But yeah, that's there.
Cool. Well, that looks great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It does. All right. I guess this ends our demo. GitLab's really cool. It's cool. Yeah, thanks. Ciao.